Record. Hey, look at that. I bet it just told you that we're recording. So we are. All right. Well, so something really interesting happened last week, or I guess about 12 days ago. The United States Supreme Court decided a case that is absolutely going to be, I don't know, huge problem for the aviation industry. They basically overturned what's called the Chevron decision, which gives deference to administrative decisions. And the problem with that, of course, is that the FAA is so risk adverse that they take forever making decisions. In fact, so they were required by Congress to do all that noise work, and it took them like 4 years to get around to producing any of it. They the Section 163 stuff, which you don't need to know that in particular, but it was the regulations that basically said if the airport had purchased property on its own, the FAA should keep their hands out of it. It took them so long to get that guidance out. It actually came out in December, and the Congress was so tired of waiting for them. It took them almost 6 years. Congress was so tired of waiting for them that they wrote a new section into the law that said, you didn't do a very good job, and we're going to take that authority away from you. Well, so the long and the short of the story is that in terms of our airport planning now, we have this new decision that says that everything that the FAA does, unless it has specific congressional authority, is subject to full review by the federal courts, which means there's no deference given to agency decisions anymore. And so you have a risk-adverse agency that you're now telling, we may overturn everything that you do. We're going to take a second look at it. So they're going to be even more risk adverse, and they're going to be even slower. And slow and innovation don't work right together. And, if you've done any of this stuff with the drones, the FAA dragged its feet. And I was part of the pilot program, the FAA Drone Integration of the Airspace System program, and they were just so it's not so much that they don't want to do it. It's that what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to be safety oriented. So they want to make it as safe as they can, but the safest way to make flying is to not fly, right? I mean, flying is perfectly safe if you don't fly, but that's not the goal, right? And so this is actually going to be a really weird change in how life works. And so what I did is I dropped the Looper Bright implications. It's an article written by one of the other attorneys here at this firm, and I dropped that into the modules. It's an interesting read. This may be we may not be in aviation at exactly the right time. It may, I don't know, it may be painful for a while, or the FAA just doesn't do anything. They don't act on the congressional authority that they have, and who knows where we go from there. We do know FAA has a safety mandate, and we know that applies to flying. So when we're doing the pilot thing, I don't think it's as big an issue because we know that that's all safety oriented. But when we're talking about the airport piece, especially developing in an airport in an environmental context, it may be a bigger deal. And so it's kind of a weird, frustrating week. Trying to sort out exactly what's going on with that. And I think we have a long way to go. I mean, we're going to get a bunch of additional guidance before everything is said and done. And that'll be fun. So this week's topic is litigation. And I'm just going to give you the brief overview and the easy how to write your paper for this week. It's a longer answer. So there's two questions. One is discovery, and the other one is open records. And probably 95% of the airports are actually owned by a city or a county or the state. So most airports, you're going to be governed by the state's Open Records Act. So there's things that don't apply to that. For instance, your security plans and those sorts of things aren't. You're not subject to that being sought out, but pretty much all the rest of your records are. And so one of the first things that we talk about with folks that are going to go run airports is don't be an idiot in your email, because the email is probably discoverable. not only discoverable, but it's probably open recordsable. So in other words, a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, or whatever your state calls it, request will probably get your emails turned over. So don't be an idiot. We do a lot of stuff that, we'll give a lot of guidance. I can give guidance that's protected as long as you protect it too. So you're an airport manager and you ask me a question, that can be protected by privilege or confidentiality, attorney-client privilege. The goal is with attorney-client privilege is that you can ask me the tough questions, and as long as I don't help you commit a crime, those things are protected. And so you don't have to turn those over for FOIA or for discovery. So the other side of the flip of this coin is somebody gets hurt or whatever, they use fire them, something, and they bring a lawsuit. Well, in that lawsuit, you have what's called discovery. And discovery, basically, you write a bunch of questions and you submit them to the other side, and they're supposed to turn over all of the information that's responsive to those questions. So let's say you fire somebody. One of the places that I represent is going to fire somebody this week, probably tomorrow. And that person sent around, well, they're a little old school. They actually posted pictures of other employees and then with sexually explicit things in the picture. In this day and age, that's just not going to work, right? So you fire them. Well, a few days, few weeks, few months later, they file a complaint that they had something else going on, and that's the reason you fired them, not for the fact that they posted this sexually explicit stuff. And you have to defend it. And so basically what happens during that discovery process, it's not Perry Mason, and I'm not even sure if you guys even know who Perry Mason was. You're going to learn who Matlock is because Kathy Bates is going to play the new Matlock, the re-envisioned Matlock. But in my day, back when I was a youngster, it was Andy Griffith. Was it Andy Griffith or Andy Taylor? What was his real name? Oh. He was the sheriff of Mayberry. And he played, it was the Andy Griffith Show. And I think, okay, so he played Andy Taylor, who was the sheriff of Mayberry, but then he also played Matlock. So Andy Griffith is Matlock. And he was this lawyer who'd, kind of get up there and he'd him and haw around, and then he'd get somebody to admit something that they didn't intend to admit. Well, the reality is of trials that 99% of the stuff, you're never going to have this happen because 99% of the time, 99% of the stuff is obtained in discovery. You get to see what the other side's hand looks like based on emails, documents, and so forth. You don't necessarily get you don't get to see the credibility of the witnesses. You don't get to see the interaction. So that can play a role. But most of the time in discovery, you see all of this information. You see, you basically uncover people's hidden stories. So that whole Fox News thing with Dominion. Part of what happened there is that during the discovery process, why did Fox News pay $787 million in a settlement with Dominion? Because when the discovery process happened, Dominion asked for all the emails that might be responsive. And all of a sudden you get all of these emails from these Fox hosts that say, we think this isn't true. We think these people are lying. And then they put it on the air anyway. And so in the discovery process, they realized they probably weren't going to win. And they probably get a judgment that was a lot worse than the $787 million. That, in fact, I almost guarantee you, two things go into that judgment calculation when you're sitting there in a room. I'm going to be in mediation all day tomorrow, which I don't mind the mediation part. It's a really bad case, really bad fact pattern, not for our side, for their side. And so it's just a huge waste of time, but that's part of what you have to put into your calculation for should I settle the case. So is the settlement amount going to be more or less? And are the legal fees going to be significant? And, fighting a case like that Dominion case, I guarantee you the legal fees were in the millions, probably a couple of million. And then, probably even more than that. It could be as much as 10 million for the legal fees on that, maybe more. Part of what happens is that you start doing that calculus and you start to get worried about my profitability for this year. as a company, and you're, and what you're gonna have to pay the lawyers, and then what you might ultimately get for the settlement amount, and you make a decision and you settle a case. Well, that discovery process is really important, right? So again, what we tell airport managers, your first time out there in a real world, you're working as an intern, even you're working as whatever. And be conscious not to be an idiot in your emails, because that stuff is all discoverable. They go in. When I was at KDOT, we had a case that was filed and I wasn't any part of it. But the outcome was very interesting to me, because they had a company that came in and they were able to recover emails that, after extensive searches, the KDOT people couldn't find them. But that computer company could go in there and they could scrub the data and they could find emails that were long since forgotten, long since you thought you shredded them. And it could also be paperwork. I was working on a case the other day, and the allegation is that there was something in a 1973 lease that nobody could find. And one of the attorneys said to me, "Hey, you know what I found? It's a 1973 lease." Were you even required to keep it? Probably, under the Missouri Records Retention Law or the Kansas Record Retention or whatever state we were in. You probably should have kept it, but pre the digital age, you hardly kept anything because it just took up space. So in discovery, if you have it, you're supposed to turn it over if it's responsive to the questions that they ask. And the same thing with the FOIA. So your quiz this week is, explain the difference between a public information, a sunshine law request, and discovery. There are a couple of videos on the deal, on the modules. A couple of them are okay, a couple of them are terrible. I think I even say one of them's terrible. I think it's because it's poorly acted, not because the information is bad. It's just terrible. Terrible discovery explanation. I wonder what that looks like. I bet the link is dead and I have to click it. No, it's alive. Here, let's look at this just for a second. I think it's only 2 minutes long, but I think the acting is just really freaking awesome. So we're going to share. We're going to share this screen. See you guys.
In this video, we will discuss the relationship between discovery and settlement in the United States. Discovery is the process where parties to a civil litigation obtain and disclose evidence prior to trial. Settlement.
Oh my God, this guy's going to put me to sleep right away. We're going to stop sharing that. So this weekend, I can't remember if I told y'all I was going to compete in the Ohio Ironman 70.3, and I did. And it was something. And swimming in Lake Erie, that was one of my big concerns, was because I grew up in that area, and Lake Erie was a disaster. I mean, it was, so the Cuyahoga River was on fire. So I was worried. I was really worried about the E. coli level in Lake Erie, the industrial output and all that other stuff. But it turns out the quality was really good. I went on the Ohio DNR site and I looked at the stuff, and it was really good. And then the swim was okay, except for I swam an extra half a mile, which is like, come on, man, help me out here. And then I rug burned the crap out of my arms on the swim, because I just don't know how I do that, but I did it anyhow. So I was really concerned about that because of the implications of swimming in Lake Erie. And I think I told you guys I made fun of my uncle because he would fish in that lake, and it was like, man, I would not eat anything that came out of that lake. But there it was. It was a good day. It was a good race, and I'm tired as hell. And so that guy's voice was going to put me straight to sleep. So we're not doing that. But there's a couple others. There's a couple other things in the modules that you can take a look at if you need some additional research or information. Kansas Open Meeting laws are in there. That's my friend Derek did that while he was in office, and I think it's exceptional. It's a website that basically, it's funny, the Kansas AG's office refused to connect to the state of Kansas state server. Anyhow, you can just click on the link at the top and it takes you to it. Oh, Chris Kobach has updated it. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Chris, an interesting dude. So that'll help you, give you some information about the Kansas Open Records Act. You can just grab some stuff from there and stick it in your paper. And then there's some pretrial discovery stuff, there's some litigation basic stuff, and then there's a very long, very long segment on litigation that was from a law school class. So if you're interested in this stuff, I mean, by all means, take a look at that and see if you can handle that long discussion. That's what law school is really like. And you can make some decisions from there. You know, it's always a nice fallback. I was surprised. One of the airlines that I represent, there's a couple of attorneys that fly for them, and I would have never guessed. But I mean, there are worse things to do than be a professional pilot. There are worse things to do than be a aviation attorney, and the combination of the two ain't half bad at all. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about is grades. Right now, let me make sure I'm not sharing the screen so you guys don't see each other's grades. I'm not. So right now I am graded through last week. So your grade should be what's reporting on the Canvas should be pretty close to what you're actually getting. I have so like for instance, Jared, you want to go through and you want to make sure that you've hit all of the quizzes because there's a couple that are missing on your screen.
Yes, sir.
But okay, but for the most part, I've only got like 3 students that don't have most stuff turned in. Everything goes to that you haven't turned in goes to a 1 at the end of this week, and then the paper is due and the presentation is due, and you can make decisions from there. You know, because you could. Unfortunately, I can't. Unfortunately, I don't have. I have a very short timeline turnaround to grade stuff and turn it in for this semester because of the summer semester. All right, I think that's everything for this week. And if you have any questions or whatever, you can always, you know, just email me or text me because I am always around, except for my phone goes to do not disturb at 10:20 at night. So, and it stays on do not disturb until 7 in the morning. All right, is there anything I can do for you guys? Do you have any random questions?
How does the points work for the quiz discussions?
It's pass fail. You have to
Yeah.
turn in 5 out of 8. I just go through and I see if you've turned in 5 out of 8, and if you have, you passed.
Okay, there's no like you don't have to put anything specific in there.
Absolutely nothing specific. It's the great joy of the discussion is that, you know, and over the course of several semesters, people were just sharing quiz answers in there, which was fine with me. I don't care. Really, the quizzes are to keep you honest and to introduce you to the material. The other partner here in the firm, he often talks about the K-State class he teaches, and he's like, I don't expect them to remember anything except for when they're in enforcement action to call us. And so, you know, it's interesting too that, you know, he teaches the part about holding out and the commercial activity and all that stuff. And with the Chevron decision, the FAA's discussion about holding out, for instance, you know, is my activity commercial or not? The FAA would come up with a series of notions of whether or not you're holding out, you're actually performing a commercial activity. And I think with the overturning the Chevron decision, that's not necessarily valid anymore. And so some of those things that we've often thought, well, the FAA is just making crap up. Now you could challenge it, and because there's no deference given to him in that situation, the district court judge is supposed to review the information, and he or she could decide that, yeah, the FAA is just making the crap up. Fascinating how much the law changed in 10 or 12 days. But you guys have to do that, right? When you're doing the professional pilot thing, you take that airport law class, or you take the FAA's tests on being a commercial pilot, whatever. And so you've had to learn a bunch of things that we basically just trusted the FAA knew what they were doing. And basically the court said, yeah, we don't trust them so much. I'm not sure if I'm depressed or really excited about it. Very strange. Presentation just needs to be on the topic that your paper's on. YouTube, TikTok. I had a kid when I was teaching at South Southeastern. I used to teach meteorology there. And I had a kid who went viral with one of his videos, and it was just a TikTok of, some basic experiment. So back then, I don't think TikTok could be more than like 30 seconds. And so he had to do like 10 of them. But now you can make a 4.5 hour TikTok, it seems like. But anyhow, so that's why I started doing it on whatever platform y'all wanted to use, so that if one of y'all went viral, then I could say I knew him when. Anything else? Life in general?
Iron Man sound pretty tough. That's all I'm thinking of.
What's that? Iron Man? It was different. I set a new personal record, so I'm happy about that. I just didn't do as well as I wanted to do. If my run had been better, I might have been pretty close to qualifying for the World Championship in Spain, which I was just going to sign up for no matter what if I got the spot, because who would, right? I mean, you got selected to go to the World Championship. Well, hell yeah. I mean, I'm an old dude, but it was still pretty good. The roads were flat. The people were nice. They closed down the whole town of Sandusky, which was impressive. That's where Cedar Point is. And so my daughter and I went to Cedar Point the day before, and then I drove back yesterday, but I'm so damn tired.
Actually, in Michigan right now. So
Oh, very
that's
cool.
that's where I live.
Huh. Very nice. And they let you take this over the summer. So are you a senior?
Yes, sir.
What are you gonna do after?
Supposed to go down to Robbins Air Force Base and work on their airfield down there.
Okay. Well, that'll be an experience. I usually tell the story about the hole that everybody dumped the chemicals in, the Air Force Base up in Alaska. Nobody knew where the hole went. Turns out it was just like going straight into the ground. No treatment or anything at all. And it was just a big cluster afterwards. And it's like, who's responsible? And the answer was, well, the United States. Gotta clean that sucker up. Yeah, so don't just dump stuff in a hole. I mean, figure out where it goes. That's all I'm saying. You're like, oh my God. Never even
Write that
thought
down
of
real quick.
What am I supposed to do with my used motor oil?
it. Exactly. Recycle it somehow. Take it to
Mm.
a hazardous waste facility. All right. Well, just let me know if you have any problems or issues. Everything goes to a 1 on Friday, and then it'll come back up to the grade it's supposed to be after you submit it, and I have a chance to grade it. So got 10 days left, and all needs to be in by the end of next week. Okie dokie.
Thank you.
All
Sounds
right,
good.
thanks, guys. We'll
Have a good
catch
one.
you next time.
You.